Shadowland is a healing.
It's reflection.
Rooted in ancestry and history.
Is a conversation about the alchemy between memory, legacy, and general responsibility for one's agency, for oneself, but also the ways in which like the outside kind of encroaches on our sense of what those things are. It is in legacy, I think, with the work of Ntozake Shange and like Toni Morrison and little bits and pieces of Lorraine Hansberry, but it's all together something all its own, with language that is incredibly rich and very specific. I think specifically those folks from New Orleans will definitely get a taste of home and a lifting of all of that legacy.
On August 29th, 2005, Hurricane Katrina devastated the Gulf Coast, making landfall with storm winds reaching as high as 125 miles per hour. I was in the first semester of my graduate school at Indiana University. We watched and listened, attended full forums, and did what graduate students do: discuss, debate, and wait. Like the rest of the country, knowing the aftermath would affect generations of people. Black families were particularly affected, as highlighted in the documentary film When the Levees Broke, directed by Spike Lee. And if you haven't seen it, you should. It shows a searing and honest depiction of real families struggling to make a way through. It's an example of how art can communicate grief while also inspiring action. Nearly 20 years following that devastation of Katrina, playwright Erika Dickerson-Despenza has written a play that focuses on this same story through the lens of family, a mother-daughter tale. Hey everybody, it's Garlia here at the Public. The Public Theater is...
Your work.
Okay. Hello, my name is Garlia Cornelia Jones, your host for Public Square 2.0. And for the next few weeks, we're going to spend some time talking about the new play, Shadowland, written by Erika Dickerson-Despenza and directed by Candace C. Jones. If you follow the work of the Public Theater in New York City, you may remember the audio play from the spring of 2021. 2 years later, with COVID restrictions shifting, Erika's fully realized production is ready to take the stage. However, instead of focusing on the writer and director, we worked with both Erika and Candace to highlight the production elements bringing this story to life, making this episode different from the audio play. As you can imagine, any play focused on New Orleans is bound to have an amazing score. And while music was a big part of the audio play, lighting and movement were new to this process. So today, we take a moment to talk with lighting designer Jeanette Oi-Suk Yew, movement director Jill M. Vallery, and composer Delfeayo Marsalis. We drop into the conversation with Jill at the top, highlighting her role as a mother and caregiver and how those parts of her life connect to her art. Jill.
Garlia.
I'm really excited that you're here. I say that about everybody. It is very true. And I'm thrilled to just get to know more about you and your work in this context outside of being a mom and a parent, which as a Black mom and as a mom period just sort of sometimes takes over all of who we are and people forget. So when I see you in like the rehearsal room and saw you in the rehearsal room, it was like, oh wait, this is not the mother to a child. This is also
artist,
full human.
Creative being separate from.
Yes.
Still connected. Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you for this. This is such an honor to be, on this platform speaking with you. So I greatly appreciate the invitation.
Yes. I'd love to just kind of start there because I talk about parenthood and being a Black mother and Black parent often. And so I'm really curious, what is that balance for you with your work and your art making? Is there even a balance? My students and I actually were talking about not using that word balance.
Yeah.
Just based on a conversation I had with Narda E. Alcorn, who was like, I don't subscribe to that word balance. Sometimes things are in the front seat, sometimes they're in the back seat. So I'm just really curious, what is that for you?
Absolutely. That is a great question. And I agree. Sometimes when you think about the word balance, you think about this idea of, things have to be like perfectly aligned, and if they're out of balance, then I'm out of balance. So I feel for me, it's the idea of peace. How can I offer peace in my household amidst the times when things are out of balance? That's kind of how I approach that, because it's a work in progress, and I'm fortunate enough to have a partner who is in the arts as well. So we're constantly, negotiating. All right, are you going to go out to see this play, or are we going to call my mom from California, to assist us in this process, because I'm traveling or I'm on tour somewhere and you're working on a project that has you from 10 to 6. So it's also the outside, our outside of our immediate family that come in and really, assist us on that process. But it's a funny story. I literally just asked my son this the other day. I asked him, I said, honey, what is it that you love about mommy? Just wanted to get in their heads and know what it is.
Yeah.
And Garlia, he said, I love the fact that you work a lot and you still spend a lot of time with me.
Ugh, that is beautiful.
I was like, okay. Right. So
that's
understands,
huge.
Yeah, that he understands that work balance,
Right.
And I feel like when I am giving myself or fortunate enough to be in the rooms that I am creatively and artistically, I'm able to then give him a full mom as opposed to, just the mom that you see doing all the things in the household and, cooking food and, just trying to navigate that. So that's
absolutely
an excellent question.
Yeah. And so many people who do not have children who are in this industry, if they do want children, these types of conversations are in their heads about what are the options, right? What are the options? What are the possibilities?
All the time. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, is it a thing that you can
actually do?
Right.
Yeah. Can you navigate
And
a career and have a child? Absolutely.
and the support system that you mentioned is really important, and not only of your communities, but within your artistic process, right?
Absolutely.
Are there things that you, as an artist parent, need from your collaborators within the project or the institutions that you have asked for, or that you have been afraid to ask for, right? To make space for yourself to
Mhm.
be able to do both of those things.
Again, funny you ask this. I am currently, well, I'm on an LOA, but I'm in the production of 1776, which is currently on
Mm,
tour.
right. Okay.
And I knew that the tour schedule was rigorous.
Yeah.
It is really, really
Absolutely.
rigorous. And
Right.
my son is in first grade. Like,
Yeah.
I can give you this much, but I'm gonna have to be here for him during these months.
Yeah.
And it was that, like, are they gonna support me? You know,
Yeah.
is it gonna be a situation where we're like, no, you know what? Thank you for your time. We're gonna have to find
Right.
somebody else to replace you
Hmm.
during these months that you are
Yeah.
requesting to
Yeah.
be out. And I procrastinated. I was like, okay, I don't know. And something Garlia was like, I have to ask for it, because
Yeah.
even if they deny me, I know that I'm making the right decision, because
Right.
I need to be here for my son during this particular time in his school
Right.
year.
Right.
And lo and behold, they were like, we completely understand. And
Amazing.
they granted it. And
That's amazing.
here I am. Exactly. Exactly. So it is that idea of putting my energy into knowing what it is that I have to prioritize,
Hmm.
and trusting that I will be supported, and in with whatever, organization that I'm in.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So you're able to do both this and the tour and prioritize
Correct.
family.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. And I'm
Yeah.
fortunate enough to be in the room with Erika and Candace, who I have grown
Yes.
extremely close to, and they know my son, they know my
Yes.
husband, so they
Yes.
understand as well. If I have to
Absolutely.
do a parent teacher conference, I'm not going to be into rehearsal,
Right.
at that particular time. They're like, do what you have to do.
Yeah. And I think the value of collaborators that understand caregiver and family responsibilities is sorely underestimated.
Yes.
It makes our jobs easier. It gives us that ability to take a breath and not have to feel like we have to make excuses for, I've been late to teaching because my daughter forgot her lunchbox and
Yeah.
I needed to go take it to school
Yeah.
or somewhere so that she had it.
That's her
And
lunch.
and she calls and she messages me as I'm on the way. So I can't, I gotta stop and go back, and because I don't want her to have a bad day, right?
Absolutely.
So it's you do all the things you can do to make sure they have everything when they walk out the door, but sometimes they don't. It's
Listen.
because they're children.
Exactly. There's been many a time you forgot your piano notebook. Ah, okay.
Right, and it's all of that.
All of that.
It's really beautiful to hear that, and to just say good acknowledge that, even for people who might be listening and on this parenting or caregiving journey, or
Absolutely.
curious, and
Absolutely.
just like, how do
And if it's one
is
more
it
thing
they
that I can offer, is having the courage to say what it is that you want, speak what it is that you need.
mm-hmm.
Sometimes I feel we get caught up, and I'll speak specifically for myself, but I've seen a
Mm-hmm.
lot of my friends, get caught up in the idea that it is my responsibility to
Yeah.
get the schoolwork done, to get the,
Yeah.
a dinner on, to get the laundry done, and all
100%.
this stuff. And it's like, if you don't speak that, then your partner's not gonna really know, you know what I mean? That
Right.
balance is so critical for the well-being of the family. So
Absolutely.
definitely speaking what it is that you need, so you give space for, your partner to rise up and help support you, because it can get
Absolutely.
really, really challenging.
So it's so huge. It is
Yeah.
so huge. Composer Delfeayo Marsalis has a strong connection to family as well. Dubbed the first family of jazz, artists with the name Marsalis have been making their impact for decades. We took a moment to touch base with the Shadowland composer as he talked about what it was like growing up in a family with such a rich musical legacy.
Yeah, well, growing up in the family was great. We had, at one time, there were 4 of us, and I was the youngest at that point. So we had a good time, and it's really our mother, Dolores, who had the vision. She graduated from Grambling State University with a degree in home economics. So our dad, he was a pianist, and that's what he wanted to do, was to play piano. And Mom had the vision. She wanted to have a large family. And, so she took care of all the business. She made sure that we did all our homework and this and that. She also encouraged us to have a certain kind of relationship with our dad, which was important because, sometimes we're doing schoolwork and we would ask questions and she would just say, wait till your daddy gets home. So that was very important to us. And, having my brothers, it was, we were more interested in athletics, playing football early on than the music. That's just what it was. We had a good time. And, we were tight. It was a small house, man. It was something. And then our younger brother Mboya was born, and Mboya was diagnosed with autism, and that kind of changed the family dynamic. And then a few years after him, Jason, who was the youngest, was born. So, it wasn't so much the family thing at that point, other than our dad was playing piano, and we went to some of those gigs, and that was exciting. But my mother and I guess a lot of the older folks of that generation, they stressed to us that they did not have a lot of opportunity, and it didn't matter about the level of skill or the seriousness. Opportunity just wasn't there. So I think that was my mom's idea, was that we were going to take advantage of whatever opportunities we could, and do the best that we could.
And at one point in the conversation, we had a surprise visit from one of my children.
The challenge is to be in sync with the director and the author in terms of what is the emotion that the music has to create and how best to do that. Someone's intruding.
Hello. I'm actually doing an interview right now, dear. She needed her.
Mom's working. Get out, woman.
Yeah,
Get out.
They don't even care. The other one has on the television. It's all chaotic.
Well, that reminds when my dad would do gigs, that was us. When we would go to my dad's, God, we had no clue.
You're just like,
what
hey,
was going on. We'd just be like,
I'm here.
Like,
what's
in the middle of
going
the song.
on?
Dad, can we go home?
Like, can we go? Are you done? Family is an important place to begin for us with this episode because it highlights the core connections with this mother-daughter story. While the Marsalis family might be a little more of an obvious connection, both Jill and Delfeayo have roots in New Orleans. With that in mind, I asked them both the value of working on a story about their hometown. I was able to work on the audio play a bit, and so I would love for you to really take us through this journey of the work that you're doing with the Grand Marshal and the importance of that role within this.
Yes,
in this piece, because I know it does really play a new and very important role in the storytelling that Erika has put forth. Yeah.
Yes, that she has so brilliantly interwoven into the tapestry of this mother
Absolutely.
and daughter relationship. I was fortunately able to be a part of this production. I think it was like 2018 at Fault Line Theater. It was one of the workshops of just, bringing it together. And I worked a lot with the two actresses, as I said before, in infusing more of an embodied place within their monologues. So when I was called again to work on the project, now that it is on its feet, Erika shared with me that there is this grand marshal component. And she kind of talked me through what she has envisioned for it. And Garlia, I was like, this is exactly what I not only envision for this space, but also the excitement of bringing dance and not just dance, but the spiritual component of dance into the space, because New Orleans is a melting pot of cultures, a melting pot of spiritualities. And one of the strongest spirituality that is practiced there is Voodoo, aside from Catholicism, of course. But from African descendants, Voodoo is practiced. And funny story, I worked with two dance companies, Haitian dance companies, after I had graduated from school. And one of the companies went to New Orleans not shortly after Katrina. And mind you, I did not mention this, which is hugely important. I'm from New Orleans.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
okay. I think
My
we
bad.
should start over.
Yeah.
Start over.
Okay.
Jill. That is very important.
Yeah.
That is very important.
Pardon, everyone. Yeah. I was born, not so much raised, because my dad was in the military. We moved when I was a year and a half. But my whole family is from New Orleans. So this piece speaks to me in such a deep way that, again, when I was asked to be a part of it with this now spiritual component, it was one of those projects that you pray for, and when you get it, you're like, okay, I have to take such good care of this because of the connection that I have with it, not only with my not only with my ancestral lineage, but also with the spiritual component added. So segueing it back to one of the Haitian dance companies that I work with, we went there after Katrina, and I remember seeing the lines, the water lines on the homes, and experiencing the city that I once knew, energy being just depleted. And the energy that this Haitian dance company was bringing into it, I felt was such a powerful, palpable experience for the city and for the community. It was the one time in my performance life that my family from my dad's side and my family from my mom's side all came together to see this and witness and experience this performance. So the connection of what Erika has introduced into the space it's like a activation of the energy of New Orleans. And the Grand Marshal not only is, how do I say it? They shapeshift. This character shapeshifts within the play. You have the Grand Marshal, who is somebody who interacts with people, brings in the parade of second line, and performs New Orleans second line, which is, I want to say, it's an indigenous dance to to New Orleans,
Yeah.
and the energy of the people of New Orleans. But they also shapeshift into a Loa by the name of Baron Samedi. And this Loa is the gatekeeper of the cemetery. So they are the Loa who brings people who are transitioning to the other side. Then the Grand Marshal shapeshifts into the Gede, which the Gede is a Haitian family that is responsible for the life and death cycle, fertility, and the energy, basically the energy of life. So as this play is moving on, one more thing, they also shapeshift into the memory for Magali, memories for Ruth, and empowering energies for Ruth. So it's a continual vacillation of activating the space within the play and activating the characters within the play as well.
I have not yet seen a run through of the production. I've obviously heard and worked on the audio play, and I've been in the rehearsal space, which felt like, there were altars in different areas of the space. And I'm from Detroit, so I take very seriously working on stories that have to deal with your home and where you're from, and I work in Detroit a lot, so it is very important for me to go back and be part of what the storytelling is for where I'm from, so that so at least I can control some part of a narrative that somebody somewhere will see. And so in hearing you talk about being from New Orleans, even having family there, going back, and then infusing this work, I'm just curious about home, and if that really drew you closer to this work, and what it even means to be part of telling this story.
In January, I went back home, maybe for 2 weeks. Yes, for about 2 weeks. And while I was there, I again connected with my family, but in a different way than what I normally do, knowing I was going to go into the space of Shadowland. I spent really concentrated time with my father's sisters, my aunts, asking in-depth questions about lineage. I spent quite a bit of time in the cemeteries. And if you know anything about New Orleans cemeteries, they are above ground and ornately kept. The grounds are really kept, but there's a lot of historical connection to the cemeteries there. So I made sure, and also understanding the importance of honoring ancestors.
Yeah.
I made sure that I went to the plots where I knew my people were, cleaned them off, did a lot of prayer and preparation for this position and this responsibility, and just spent a lot of time being still. I would normally go to New Orleans and I'd be out with my family. Where we going? Taco Tuesdays, and we're gonna go, here and party, and it's wonderful when it affords that. But I knew that this time going in, this time was a time for me to be still and to be reflective and to be in that place where I'm able to receive, whether that be instruction, whether that be words of wisdom, for myself moving forward, whether that be just direction, and making sure that, again, I am moving any insecurities that I may have as my own personal self, and being able to be a vessel to conduit truth, authenticity, homage, and honor to this, my legacy.
And as I hear you talk about going home, I'm really left with that feeling of being still, and you really sitting in the stillness and being open to hearing what you needed to hear to move forward with this work. How does that differ from other things that from the other projects that you work on? I feel like we've touched on it a bit, but it does feel like the approach to Shadowland and working with Candace and Erika in this room is not just about working on a play, right? And so as we talk about storytelling and stories in our ancestry, and that being what Black and Brown people do is tell these epic stories that weave, right? We've talked about weaving, and that also makes me think about water and the flow of that, and how it cleanses and destroys and hurts and heals all at the same time. It does all of those things. So for me, what is different? What makes this more than just first day of rehearsal, introduce yourself, I'm the movement director, right? Like, what makes it more than that?
Yeah. Well, you mentioned when you've come into the space, you've seen altars that are set up in the space. And I feel that, and I appreciate the care in which Erika and Candace take to understand the importance of the energies that we are dealing with. you know, and understand the importance of the support that our ancestors have for us and are always around us. So that alone is setting up the space for self-accountability. It's setting up the space for healing. It's setting the space for us to be able to be in community, you know, and know that it's not just us who's showing up in this space every day.
Right.
You know, it is us with our, you know, people that are showing up in this space. So we have our ancestor altar, and we also have, which I really appreciate as well, the altar for Baron Samedi, because that is also an energy that we are paying utmost respect and homage to. So if we are calling them into this space, then we need to make sure that we are calling them in a way that, again, is of the utmost respect to this deity and study. That's another thing I appreciate about Erika and Candace, is they really study what it is that these deities like, how it is that you are to greet them, so that we're in a good space, you know, within the creative space. You know? So that's one of the things that's different about this process as opposed to other processes that I've worked on or shows that I've worked on, is that deep appreciation and knowing that we are not just our individual selves. And God bless my sister Erika. I always let her know that I appreciate that no matter what, she's showing up in the spirit of liberation. She's showing up in the spirit of community, connectivity. Like, how do we, not only in the midst of caring for ourselves, how do we show up and care for each other? You know,
and no, I was just gonna say that a care is and feels very baseline, right? In all of the interactions, that is the standard. Yeah. And then we just move forward and through and up and out, really, from there. As someone who is from New Orleans with such a strong kind of connection to that city, what does it mean for you to be part of telling this story?
It's the kind of story that I love. I mean, it has all the important and crucial elements. Of course, if you're an actual jazz musician, then you have a respect and an appreciation for the tradition. But at the same time, you know, we're trying to do things that are relevant, culturally relevant today. So this play touches on, you know, the same thing that's been going on. And, you know, the idea that developers are coming in and of course they want to take up all, they want to buy the land and they want to do whatever they want. And of course they're making these promises. They're empty promises. And we kind of know that, but it's like, okay, do we need this money or do we try to maintain something? And if we maintain it, then what does that actually mean? Which is really tough for Black folk, man. It's just, you know, we've been like the greatest nomads in history. It's very difficult for Black folk to stay placed and stay put in the community. And, you know, earlier in our history, when folks was ready for us to go, they'd just burn us out. They'd just say, okay, it's time for this town to go. So we still have kind of those scars that we're trying to heal from, but we're still trying to maintain. So I think it's a very, again, a compelling story, and it's excellently told, and I'm definitely glad to be a part of it.
Yeah, you know, I had the chance to speak with Jill, who's the movement director, and Jill is also has family from New Orleans, and so, you know, we also just connected on what it also means for her just to go back to a space where she has familial roots, and to tell a story about that place. And I often draw that connection just because I'm from Detroit, as our the production team of this podcast, and I do a lot of work back home, and it has such great meaning to be able to be involved in things in Detroit and be part of the telling of that story. And the answer that you just gave also highlights something I also think a lot about, which is how we, the Black community, how we have always used the arts as a refuge. And I'm wondering if you can talk a bit about that connection. Like, what is the power in our ability to use music to help us heal?
Mhm. Well, you know, look, they talk about the Greeks, and the Greeks knew about the art, the importance of the arts and music and literature. It wasn't until the British came along, and they just despised music, man. The British, Lord have mercy. But original man, original woman comes from Africa. So, you know, all things sprang from Africa. But because of this worldwide narrative, which is really against the people of African descent, I guess we could say the darker people, since everyone actually is from Africa in one way or another. But the reality is that we, you know, that was original man and woman, and the idea of culture, the idea of music, the idea of arts, the idea of telling stories, you know, that are didactic, and all of this stems from Africa. And, you know, from the standpoint of power and money, there's kind of been what I perceive as a long-standing attempt to shift away from where it actually came from and to credit other folks. And, you know, I said the thing about Britain because the advantage that we had in New Orleans is that we were colonized by the French and the Spanish, who had respect for, they're like, yeah, there's going to be a tough situation, but, you know, we respect what y'all got going on. Whereas the British, they were more about control. So their vibe was like, man, get the drums away from them Africans. We don't know what they're doing. So it was about the control and so it was really, really, really tough in these places, Mississippi, Alabama, Virginia, really tough. New Orleans, you had a little more freeway. And what the reason people love New Orleans, even today, is one, the direct links that we have to our Africanism, and two, it's really what the country was supposed to be. It's the true melting pot where people can come along and they can find their way. And, you know, it's something that the people who live in New Orleans are not trying consciously to maintain these traditions.
Right.
It's just what it is. It's real life. And you find that on the continent of Africa, it's the same kind of a thing. Folks are living the way that they've been living, and they just, you know, things that you have that are a tradition, but also they're important for what is going on today. So, you know, again, I love New Orleans, and this play is a great representation of some of the beliefs and ideals that we have as New Orleanians.
Earlier in the conversation, Jill mentioned the second line, a New Orleans tradition that Delfeayo also references as he shares what he hopes people take away from this production.
Well, a lot of folks love the second line, and they love the idea that New Orleans music, it has a certain type of a sound of celebration. But the great thing is that celebration is also an expression of pain, and it is a way that the African descended folks of color have dealt with pain. Rather than kind of be sad and depressed, they channeled that energy into something that was joyous and something that was a way to just look at it. Okay, we're just here for a small amount of time, so we're going to make the best out of what this situation is. And again, while that narrative has been changed by the dominant culture for their own benefits, we still love that idea that, yeah, okay, this is jive, but we're going to turn it around. We're not going to sit there and wallow in the fact of how jive it is. So the idea is that you have the emotional suffrage and pain, but then you have the joy and the celebration. And the real question is, how do you reconcile those two? And this play does a great job of dealing with that dynamic.
It's impossible to visit New Orleans and not think about water. And not because of Katrina. Whether walking down the riverfront, catching an impromptu performance in Jackson Square, getting food on The Fisherman, or finding a random party in the Bywater, New Orleans is a city that pulses with the tide. But how do you create water on stage? Part of this task went to lighting designer Jeanette Yew. We caught up with her just a few days before launching into tech.
I actually got introduced to it during the pandemic. So the first time I read it was like super emotional because of it is dealing with a honestly, I still feel like that Katrina is a big giant wound in this country that we have never really reconciled. And there are many of them, obviously, in this country, but I feel like that's we have a habit of not reconciling with pain, which understandably no one wants to, but I do actually, personally, I think it's important. So when I first read it, Erika actually sent me a recording of it. This is before the podcast. That was like a Zoom reading that she sent me, and it was like super emotional. I like when I sat through it the first time, I didn't even necessarily thinking about the what happened in terms of story-wise, but just was really moved and feeling really emotional about that, about the pain in a lot of ways. So that was my first introduction to it. Then I listened to the podcast, the actual production of it, and starting to. One of the things I love working with Erika, particularly like her as a playwright, is that she finds a way to be political in a very authentic, in your face, but really shaking you sort of like to the core kind of way that is not didactic, that is not accusatory. And I think that is really exciting because like when I hear it again, I hear more of the politics and the complexity of social question that she's really asking. So that is my sort of second introduction to it. And Candace is like amazing dramaturg. I know she always have dramaturg working with her, but as a director, she and Candace is such a force because I think that she brings out the human interaction, the detail that make the characters become super vivid. So yes, there's all these like big social question, politics that Erika is like displaying it in front of us to force us to like take a look at them, and then Candace bring out this human way of addressing those things, that the two of them is just like such great partnership, and that's how I have always got into working with them, from Color Water to this, because Color Water have the same kind of like inquiries that Erika is asking.
Was there anything about this piece that challenged you in a different way?
Oh, I mean, I think it's challenging because, first of all, Jason Alderson Rest did an amazing design of the space, but the play itself, basically after a very short amount of time, the performance-wise, the actors are pretty confined in a certain area, because the premise of the piece is like the space is getting flooded and kind of inaccessible. And so technically speaking, I now have like, even though it is a big space, I am limited to the area that I'm lighting, to reveal the story. And each section of the story gets more and more complex emotionally, and more dangerous also as the situation, get more dire. So my challenge will be, how do I use the same tools again to think about revealing them dramaturgically as each layer gets peels off, and get to this really, I don't want to give it away. I'm not going to give away the story, but get to an end that is really extremely heart-wrenching and emotional. So that is going to be my challenge for this, because most of the time they actually perform in a pretty small amount of space.
And so, what is it like working with water conceptually? How does that inform, and how has that informed your design, whether literally or metaphorically?
I have now, I think the public, at least for the lighting department, they already say that now I can only do shows that has water, because I've done 2 shows now with actual water on stage. Technically speaking, I think I need to provide a lot of sense of movement in space, because water is like organically reflecting and moving. So technically I try to instill level of movements. But then I think that for us specifically, it is actually how the movement and how the reflection, how the water itself tells story. So I think for color water, they were sort of metaphorically encompassing the entire space, because there's this water bottle hanging up. So I have tools that changes the color and movement of it to make it feel like the entire space is like constantly moving organically like water. For Shadowland, because we really are coming from, the water is more coming from the ground, because it's a flooding, there are some rain from the top, but mostly it's this idea of like seeping in, like getting higher and higher. So in that case, I'm trying to get the water to go up in the air, so kind of get the reflection into the entire space through the idea of reflection. So that's kind of like the approach for Shadowland. So and because the Luester have white columns, so that it will be able to take idea of like reflection much more dynamically. So that's what I'm trying to work with. And then the unpredictability of water also, like that depends on how it moves, the reflection changes. So I'm using those, keeping in mind how water behaves, and then use it in part of the storytelling.
Back in 2021, as the public was releasing the audio play version of Shadowland, Georgetown professor Soyica Colbert hosted a 3-part conversation called The Clearing. This series featured Erika, Candace, and a collection of other guests, all in conversation about Shadowland. We're going to shake up our regular schedule as we re-release The Clearing over the next few weeks, so stay tuned as we continue this conversation. Shadowland runs at the Public in the Wester Hall beginning April 20th. You should check it out, and not just because I say so.
Shadowland is
for me, and I hope everyone that has the good fortune to join us, Shadowland is indeed a place to come out of the shadows and into the light of who we really, really are, and the beauty that all that brings, and the things that we don't need that we can now leave behind.
We hope you're enjoying this content as much as we love producing it for you. As always, don't forget to like, subscribe, and give us that 5-star rating you know we deserve. For everyone here on the Public Square team, I'm Garlia Cornelia Jones, and we'll see you Thursdays at the Public Square. Welcome home to the Public Square. We're so glad to have you back.
Today's episode of Public Square 2.0 was hosted and produced by Garlia Cornelia Jones, Director of Innovation and New Media at the Public Theater, with support from New Media Associate Emily White. Creative production includes story support by John Sloan III of Ghostlight Creative Productions and audio production by Justin K. Sloan of Ghostlight Creative Productions. Special thanks to Janelle Queso, Erika Dickerson-Despenza, Chantal Easterling, Lynette Freeman, Perry Gaffney, Palmer Heffron, Candace C. Jones, Delfeayo Marsalis, Lizanne Mitchell, Jonice Abbott-Pratt, Jill M. Vallery, Joy Thompson, and Jeanette Oi-Suk Yew. For a full list of credits, please visit our website, publictheater.org, for the show notes.